This is Towers, a Metazoo podcast. My name is Ester, and we are back from the Earth Tower. I'm finally catching up on work and cards and qualification and all of that since getting back, and I'm ready to make more episodes. But before we got back to our regularly scheduled programming episodes I've promised you, there's information you need to know. So we're going to do like a State of the Towers, State of the Podcast. I'll talk about Earth Tower a little bit, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do for our next 4 or 5 episodes. So first off, Forest has been postponed till the end of the year. We don't know when that's going to be, but it's getting chucked to the end of the current cycle. This is a decision that in general people have been very happy with. I've had some communication with a caster from Rhinelander who was very concerned about whether that town could host as many people as we would want at a tower. It's going to be very expensive to travel to. And also, man, that staff, the judge team, everybody's been working so hard. I think taking a month off to figure out kind of what's next is good, which means Flame Tower is next. And that's going to be in June in Texas, which is a little bit more central by the definition of Texas. So that's the thing you want to start looking out for. You can qualify for this tower the entire month of May, which they have not done before, but you can sign up for it as soon as May 8th. I don't know how this is going to impact whether you get into the tower or not. In Water Tower, if you signed up as much as 10 minutes after the signups, you might not have gotten in. You would have had to get on the wait list. Whereas Earth Tower was more flexible. They allowed way more people to sign up for it, and they gave you more time to sign up for it, which is why I went. I was not initially planning on going to Earth Tower because I didn't think I'd be able to qualify. I'll keep you posted on if there's any more news or relevant information, but the point being, go to an LGS, qualify for the event, sign up for Flame Tower. This seems to be one of the big ones. A lot of people I'm talking to are planning on going to Flame. Flame is a very interesting aura type, especially under the context of the tower format. And I'm hearing some whispers that we're going to get some kind of news in the next week, probably Terra bonuses. We'll see if anything else comes. I will report on that here. So if Earth has happened, if Forest is getting punted, if Flame is coming up, but not for over a month, where does that leave the podcast? That finally gives me time to catch up on a lot of things. Obviously, I went to Water Tower. I had a bunch of experiences there that I've not been able to share with you. I went to Earth Tower. For Earth Tower, I have been showing you what my brewing process looks like, and I did not have time, which I'll get into later, to get the 3rd episode up, but I'm going to do a 3rd episode for that just because I want you to have a complete framework of what a brewing period looks like for me so you can use them for other towers. As I mentioned at the start of those episodes, it's not going to be a normal thing for the podcast for me to just give you decks, but I want you to still have all the tools you need to build a successful spellbook. But let's talk about the Earth Tower for a few minutes. I had a great time. It was in New York City. I did end up going to the gala, which was a wild thing to have happen the night before a tournament. And something very big happened, at least for me, at the Earth Tower. And something that very much calls into question some elements of this podcast, or I guess legitimizes it. I went undefeated day 1 at Earth Tower. I didn't lose once. I got 2nd place at the end of the day. The person who got 1st place got there because they played all of their matches. They didn't do any intentional drawing. They had 1 defeat that day. That was against yours truly. And had I known I was going to play them later, I would have played all of my matches too to try to shoot for that 1st place. But that meant I got into the top 32, which was very exciting for my first time. Part of the goal of this podcast was just how do we get to top 32? And 2nd tower, we made it. And I got to tell you, I have a hunger now. Now top 32 is my base standard. That's what I want to hit. But I still have a lot to learn. I have a lot I have learned, and I want to arm as many of you as possible with good information. So I want to talk about how I'm going to do that. The next episode, I'm going to do part 3 of Earth Brewing, and I'm going to do it with the hindsight of having participated at the tower. So I already had a framework for what I was going to do with that episode, but I ended up having to go to New York early, so I did not have time to record it. So I'm going to do that so you will have a 1, 2, 3, and I will also add the notes I recorded the night before the tower on changes I was making, things I was keeping in mind, which I can then follow up with in the next episode to tell you how it went. That episode is going to be a spellbook tech, a breakdown of what I played, why I played it, how my games went, you'll have full access to the list. So you can click on the pages, see how they all work together. And I'll talk about my day 2 experience too in Top 32. After that, I want an episode about how I almost ID'd, aka intentionally drawed out of Top 32. And Michael, who got first place that day, who's probably my favorite match of day 1, I've got a little interview with him on why he doesn't ID and kind of the pitfalls of it. This is a newer concept to me. I knew at Water Tower, people who went undefeated eventually just started drawing out with their opponents because they were guaranteed a spot in day 2, but you're not always guaranteed. So we're going to talk about that. In the way that for the Water Tower, I talked to a lot of casters on what does it take to participate in a tower. At Earth Tower, I asked everyone, did you play native cards? Did they help? I just talked about this set in general with people, and so we're going to do an episode on the impact of having a set drop the day before a tournament. Also give you the full story for how I obtained the cards I did and how that impacted my experience. From there, I'm going to have an episode that's going to cover a very key concept, which is call the judge. I had an experience with one match in particular in which I had to call the judge numerous times, and if I hadn't called the judge, I would have likely lost that match. I found a lot of new players, myself included. They don't want to call the judge. They find it to be rude, but I'm going to kind of get into why you should call the judge, why it's not rude, ways to do it where your opponent will probably be chill. And I will also get into kind of a play-by-play of that match. When I called the judge, what I called them for, how it changed our game. And from there, we're going to get into Flame and Lightning Tower prep. We now have the cards we're going to be playing with for the next few towers. So you can start brewing immediately. Ideally, the framework I put in Earth Tower for newer people will also serve you in Flame and Lightning. That being building a gauntlet, iterating on your deck, reading the cards, seeing when something new should be included. But with a longer wait between towers, that will give me an opportunity to also dig into just what it's like going to these things, traveling. Those episodes I'll do closer to when the Flame Tower is going to happen, so that if you have any concerns or you have nerves or you haven't been to a competitive event, you'll have at least some information, some journals, so to say, giving you my experience and things that I have learned. And because making shows takes time and they're not always going to come out regularly, I got to see a lot of people who make Metazoo content and then meet some people I hadn't met before. I wanted to shout them out so that you could go watch their stuff while you're waiting for new Towers episodes. Cardboard and Coffee, great place for news for Metazoo and other card games. I met Ian. It was great. Ian was one of the early champions of the Towers podcast and helped me kind of get integrated into the creator community. Ian's co-hosts on the Cryptid Conversations show on YouTube, MJ and Deadly, were there. I got to see Deadly again. I had played Deadly at Water Tower. We had a great time. And then MJ was a delight. I spent a lot of time with that Immortal Workshop team throughout the weekend and just top-notch people. Go to their YouTube channel. Cryptid Conversations will be talking about Earth Tower as well. Johnny Dunn of the Metabroz, always good to see him. And another one of his Caster Society team members, Metakai, aka Dylan Tran, the main guy I buy Metazoo from, was there. I got to talk to him a bit. If you're trying to get into the real competitive stuff, MetaTalk is still my favorite resource for that. And I was able to talk with Herman and Logan a bunch, my defeats at Water Tower, who were very gracious when it came to advice, especially with me going into day 2, having not done that before. And then if you wanted to see what it was like at the Earth Tower, I met Turmentic, who is like the lore master of Metazoo, delightful fellow, and he just put out a video covering the Earth Tower. It's top quality, it's narrated. If you like this podcast, I guarantee you're going to like that. And you'll even see me in it. You'll see how I did in day 2. I think that gets us up to date on what I wanted to cover. Look forward to the next episode where we're going to get into Earth Brewing and talk about what pages ended up being the most impactful. I appreciate all of your patience. We'll see you soon. Towers, a Metazoo podcast, was created by me, Ester Ellis. The cover art was made by Chandler Candela. Music by the Heatley Bros. More details in the description. Want to say hello? Follow the show on Instagram at Towers Podcast. Send me an email at towersgamepodcast@gmail.com and say hi in Metazoo's Discord servers. Many of the figures in Metazoo originate in indigenous lore, and I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I make this podcast on the traditional lands and home of the Tongva Nation. This game presents us with a rich opportunity to get in touch with the living cultures that surround us. And I hope you can take a moment to reflect on the history of the land you stand on and the figures and the cards you play.